Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, I want to speak to you today about something powerful, something life-changing, being marked by God. You see, God's touch upon your life is no small thing. It's not a whisper lost in the wind, but a roaring truth that shapes your destiny. And today I want to share with you 7 signs that show you are marked by God. First, there's a deep conviction of purpose. When God marks you, he gives you a purpose greater than yourself. You may feel a burning desire to do something meaningful, something that lasts. It's not about wealth or fame, but a calling to make a difference, to bring his light into dark places. Second, there's unshakable faith. When the storms of life rage, you stand firm. Not because you are strong, but because he is strong in you. Your faith is like a rock, and though trials may come, you remain steadfast, trusting his plan above all else. Third, there's a relentless hunger for his presence. When God has placed his mark on you, the world's pleasures cannot satisfy. You hunger for his word. You thirst for his presence. Your soul cries out for a closeness that nothing else can give. And when you seek him, you find him. Fourth, there's a heart of compassion. The love of God isn't something you keep to yourself. It overflows. You feel his love for the broken, the hurting, the lost. You are drawn to help, to heal, to bring hope. That's not just kindness, my friends. That's the heart of God beating within you. Fifth, there's spiritual warfare. Yes, when God marks you, the enemy takes notice. Temptations and trials will come your way. But don't be discouraged, for this is evidence that you are chosen, and the one who called you is greater than any force that tries to stand against you. 6, there's divine protection and guidance. Even when you walk through the valley of the shadow of death, you fear no evil. Not because you are strong, but because his rod and his staff, they comfort you. You are guided by his spirit, even when the path is unclear. Finally, there's a life of transformation. You are not who you once were. The old has passed away and all things have become new. This transformation is the evidence of his work in your life. He doesn't just improve you, he makes you new. My friends, if you recognize these signs in your life, take heart. You are marked by God. And if you do not know this, his mark is not beyond your reach. His love is extended to you right now. He is calling your name. All you have to do is answer. So, will you answer that call today? Being marked by God means something extraordinary. It's not just a casual experience or a passing feeling. It's a powerful calling that stirs the deepest parts of your soul. When God places his hand upon your life, it comes with a purpose that reaches far beyond your personal desires or ambitions. This divine purpose is not about achieving wealth, power, or recognition in this world. Instead, it's about being called to fulfill something that matters in the kingdom of God. It's about stepping into a mission that leaves an eternal impact. From the moment you feel that divine touch, something within you changes. It's like a seed planted deep in your heart, growing with every moment of prayer, faith, and surrender. And as it grows, so does your conviction. Suddenly, you find yourself drawn to paths you never expected to walk. You may feel a strong urge to help others, to speak words of life and hope, to bring healing where there is pain. That's not your own desire alone. It's God's purpose being stirred within you. This sense of purpose is often accompanied by a restless yearning. You may feel uncomfortable in places where you once felt at ease. The things of this world that once brought you pleasure now seem hollow and meaningless. Why? Because God has marked you for something greater. His purpose is pulling you away from temporary satisfactions and towards something everlasting. The call is clear, and though you may try to ignore it or resist it, it continues to resonate within your soul. And this calling is not limited to one aspect of life. It may influence the way you approach your career, relationships, dreams, and even your struggle. For some, it's a calling to preach the gospel, to evangelize, to be a voice in the wilderness crying out for repentance and renewal. For others, it's a calling to serve, to uplift those in need, to be the hands and feet of Christ in a broken world. For many, it's a calling to live a life of integrity and faithfulness, shining the light of Jesus through everyday actions. But make no mistake, having a divine purpose doesn't mean the path will be easy. When you are marked by God, you are also marked for trials. The enemy recognizes your calling and will do everything possible to discourage, distract, and derail you from fulfilling it. But even those challenges serve a purpose. They refine you. They strengthen your faith. They draw you closer to the one who called you. And through every struggle, God's purpose for your life only grows clearer and stronger. One of the most beautiful aspects of being marked by God is the assurance that you are not alone in your calling. God equips those he calls. When he places a purpose upon your life, he also gives you the strength, wisdom, and resources to accomplish it. Even when you feel inadequate or unworthy, his grace is sufficient. His power is made perfect in your weakness. And that's a glorious truth. Being marked by God means you are part of a greater story, a story that began long before you were born and will continue long after you leave this earth. It's a story of redemption, love, and transformation. And your part in that story matters. You have been called to leave a mark on this world that points others to him. There's something incredibly fulfilling about walking in the purpose God has designed for you. It brings a sense of joy and peace that cannot be found anywhere else. Even when the journey is hard, even when the world doesn't understand, you know that your steps are ordered by the Lord. And that assurance carries you through. So if you feel that divine stirring within you, don't ignore it. Don't push it away because of fear or doubt. Embrace it. Seek God with all your heart. Pray for his guidance. Ask him to reveal his purpose for your life and to give you the courage to follow wherever he leads. Because when you walk in his purpose, you are living the life you were always meant to live, and there is no greater fulfillment than that. When you are marked by God, one of the most evident signs is the presence of unshakable faith. This faith is not a shallow belief built on emotions or fleeting moments of inspiration. Instead, it is a deeply rooted conviction that God is who he says he is, and he will do what he has promised. It's a faith that stands firm even when life throws its worst at you. And make no mistake, life will test your faith. Trials, disappointments, heartaches, and setbacks will come, but when God has marked you, your faith endures. Unshakable faith is not something you are born with. It's something that grows through experience. It's forged in the fires of hardship, strengthened by seasons of waiting, and refined through moments of doubt. When God marks you, he doesn't promise a life free from struggles. Instead, he promises to be with you through them all. His presence becomes the foundation upon which your faith is built. There will be moments when the world tries to convince you that your faith is meaningless. People may mock you. Circumstances may discourage you, and even your own mind may question whether God is truly with you. But deep down, there's a certainty that refuses to be shaken. It's the voice of the Holy Spirit reminding you of God's promises and urging you to keep moving forward. This unshakable faith gives you the ability to face impossible situations with courage. It allows you to look at a mountain and say, move, believing that God has given you the authority to overcome. It empowers you to walk through the darkest valleys without fear, knowing that God's rod and staff are there to guide and protect you. It is not a blind optimism, but a confident assurance rooted in the character and faithfulness of God. The beauty of this kind of faith is that it doesn't depend on your own strength. You may feel weak, discouraged, or even broken at times, but your faith is anchored in the one who never fails. The Apostle Paul spoke of this faith when he said, "When I am weak, then I am strong." Through Corinthians 12:10. The reason for this paradox is simple. Your faith doesn't rely on your own abilities, but on God's power working through you. But unshakable faith is not just about personal resilience. It's also about trust and surrender. It means placing your entire life in God's hands and believing that His plans for you are good, even when you can't see the whole picture. It's the kind of faith that says, not my will, but yours be done. It's a faith that understands that God's timing is perfect, even when it feels delayed. This faith is also what allows you to inspire others. When people see you standing firm in the midst of hardship, they can't help but wonder what gives you such strength. And when you point them to God, your testimony becomes a beacon of hope for those who are struggling. Your faith becomes a living, breathing example of what it means to trust in God's promises. Unshakable faith doesn't mean you never feel afraid or discouraged. It doesn't mean you always have all the answers or that your path will be free of pain. What it does mean is that you are determined to trust God no matter what. It means you choose to believe His word even when circumstances suggest otherwise. It means you hold on to His promises even when they seem distant. And that's the beauty of being marked by God. This faith He gives you is not just for your own benefit. It's meant to draw others to Him. It's meant to shine a light in the darkness and give hope to the hopeless. When you stand firm in faith, it's not just your life that is transformed. It's the lives of those around you who see the power of God at work within you. In a world filled with uncertainty, fear, and confusion, unshakable faith is a powerful testimony. It's a declaration that God is greater than any problem, stronger than any storm, and more faithful than any promise this world could ever offer. And when you are marked by God, that faith becomes a constant source of strength, guiding you through every trial and leading you into the fullness of His purpose. When God marks you, one of the most profound and undeniable signs is a relentless hunger for His presence. This hunger is not something that can be easily explained or satisfied by anything the world offers. It is a deep, unquenchable yearning that draws you closer to God, pushing you to seek Him more earnestly, more passionately, and more consistently. It is a craving that nothing else can fulfill because it comes from the very core of your soul, where God has placed His divine touch. From the moment you encounter God in a real and personal way, something changes within you. You may have once been satisfied by the fleeting pleasures of this world, entertainment, material wealth, or human approval, but now none of that truly matters. Those things feel shallow, even meaningless, compared to the sweetness of God's presence. You find yourself longing for moments alone with Him, moments where you can pour out your heart in prayer, listen to His voice, and simply dwell in His presence. This hunger drives you to pursue Him with everything you have. It's not enough to simply go through the motions of religion or follow rituals without genuine passion. You want something real. You want to encounter the living God in all His glory, mercy, and love. This relentless desire becomes the very heartbeat of your faith journey, motivating you to draw near to Him daily. And here's the beautiful part: God responds to that hunger. The Bible tells us, draw near to God, and He will draw near to you. James 4:8. When you seek Him with all your heart, He meets you in ways that are undeniable. His presence becomes tangible, comforting. It's like drinking from a well that never runs dry, yet always leaves you thirsting for more. But this hunger also comes with a price. It often requires you to separate yourself from distractions, to turn away from things that once captivated your attention but now feel hollow. Friends may not understand why you spend so much time in prayer or why you're so devoted to reading the Scriptures. They may see your passion as excessive or unnecessary, but to you it's essential, it's life itself. This yearning for God's presence also drives you to pursue holiness, not because you are trying to earn His love, but because you want nothing to stand between you and Him. You begin to let go of sinful habits and thoughts, not out of fear or obligation, but out of love and desire to be closer to Him. His presence is more precious to you than anything else, and you are willing to make sacrifices to keep that connection strong. The hunger for God's presence is also evident in your worship. It's no longer just about singing songs or repeating prayers. Your worship becomes a genuine expression of your love and reverence for Him. Whether you are alone in your room or standing among a congregation, your focus is solely on Him. You pour out your heart, not caring who sees or hears, because your worship is directed at the one who has marked you. This relentless hunger also drives you to seek His guidance and wisdom. You don't want to make decisions based on your own understanding. You want to hear His voice, to know His will, and to walk in obedience. Prayer becomes more than a ritual. It becomes a lifeline. You find yourself constantly talking to God, seeking His direction, and waiting for His response. But no matter how much of God's presence you experience, it's never enough. There's always a desire for more. And that's not because God is holding back from you. It's because He's drawing you even deeper. The more you experience His presence, the more you realize how vast and limitless His love truly is. It's a journey that never ends, a pursuit that only grows stronger with time. This hunger also fuels your desire to share Him with others. You can't help but speak of His goodness because His presence has so profoundly changed you. Your testimony becomes powerful not because of eloquent words, but because it comes from a place of genuine encounter. You have experienced God for yourself, and you want others to experience Him too. Ultimately, the hunger for God's presence is a sign that you are marked by Him. It's a divine pull that keeps you seeking, yearning, and reaching for more of Him. And as you continue to pursue Him, you find yourself being transformed, renewed, and empowered to fulfill the purpose He has placed upon your life. This hunger is a gift, a calling, and a privilege that leads you into a deeper relationship with the one who made you and marked you for His glory. When you are marked by God, one of the clearest signs is a heart of compassion. This compassion is not something you muster up from within yourself. It is divinely planted by God and flows out of His love for humanity. It is a supernatural love that reaches beyond personal convenience and comfort. It is a love that sees people not as they are, but as God sees them, precious, valuable, and in need of grace. This heart of compassion often begins as a gentle stirring. You find yourself moved by the suffering of others in ways you never were before. It may start with a single moment, a glance at a homeless person on the street, a conversation with someone who is hurting, or a news story about injustice. But that moment lingers. It doesn't fade away like other passing concerns. Instead, it plants itself deep within you and grows stronger with time. You begin to see people differently. Where you once may have been indifferent or judgmental, you now feel empathy. You see the brokenness, the pain, the loneliness that people carry. And instead of turning away, you feel compelled to help. That's because God's compassion is not passive. It is active, relentless, and always seeking to heal, restore, and uplift. This divine compassion leads you to act. It drives you to go out of your way to show kindness, to offer a helping hand, to speak words of encouragement. It pushes you to forgive when others would hold grudges, to give generously when others would cling to their possessions. Your actions become an extension of God's love to a hurting world. But make no mistake, having a heart of compassion is not always easy. It requires vulnerability. It means allowing yourself to feel the pain of others, to let their burdens touch your heart. It means stepping into uncomfortable situations and loving people who may not love you back. Sometimes it means serving in obscurity, helping those who can offer you nothing in return. And yet, the more you walk in this compassion, the more your heart aligns with God's heart. You begin to understand that this compassion is not just an emotion, it is a calling. It is part of the purpose God has placed upon your life. When you see someone in need, it's as if God is giving you an invitation to be His hands and feet. What's remarkable about this compassion is that it doesn't discriminate. It doesn't matter whether a person is rich or poor, educated or uneducated, popular or forgotten. God's love extends to everyone, and when you are marked by him, your love does too. Your heart breaks for the lost, the hurting, the oppressed, and the forgotten. And you find yourself drawn to minister to them, to show them the love of God in practical and tangible ways. But compassion is not only about meeting physical needs, it's also about spiritual healing. When you are marked by God, you long to see people set free from the bondage of sin and hopelessness. You want them to know the joy and peace that comes from a relationship with Jesus. So you reach out not only with words of kindness, but with the message of salvation. You become a messenger of hope, pointing people to the one who can truly heal their brokenness. Compassion also compels you to stand against injustice. It gives you the courage to speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, to defend the oppressed, and to work toward righteousness in a world filled with corruption and cruelty. When you are marked by God, you cannot remain silent in the face of evil. You are called to be a voice for truth, mercy, and justice. And here's something beautiful. The more you pour out compassion, the more God fills you with his love. It's a cycle of grace. You give because he has given to you, and as you give, he gives you even more. This is why acts of compassion never drain you. Instead, they refresh you, draw you closer to God, and deepen your understanding of his love. Ultimately, a heart of compassion is one of the most powerful evidences that you are marked by God. It is his love moving through you, touching lives and transforming hearts. And when you allow that compassion to flow freely, you fulfill the purpose God has placed upon your life. You become a vessel of his grace, a reflection of his goodness, and a testimony of his power to change lives. When you are marked by God, one of the undeniable signs is that you become a target for spiritual warfare. The enemy recognizes that God's hand is upon you, and he will do everything in his power to hinder, discourage, and even destroy your faith and purpose. This opposition is not random or coincidental. It is a deliberate strategy to derail you from fulfilling God's calling on your life. But here's the powerful truth. Opposition is evidence that you are marked by God. Spiritual warfare often begins subtly. It may come as doubts whispered into your mind, questions about your identity, your worth, or your ability to fulfill God's purpose. The enemy will try to make you believe that you are not qualified, that you are too flawed, or that God has abandoned you. These mental attacks can be relentless, but they are designed to make you question the very thing God has called you to do. Then there are the emotional attacks. The enemy knows how to exploit your feelings, pushing you toward fear, anxiety, discouragement, and even despair. You may find yourself feeling overwhelmed by circumstances, questioning why God is allowing you to face such difficulties. But remember, the enemy's goal is to make you give up, to convince you that the battle is not worth fighting. The attacks are not limited to your mind and emotions. They can also manifest in your relationships. Conflicts may arise out of nowhere. People may turn against you, and betrayal can leave you wounded and confused. It's as if everything and everyone around you is conspiring to pull you away from your calling. And while it's easy to focus on the human aspect of these struggles, the true source is often spiritual. The enemy will use anything he can to discourage you, especially when he sees that God's mark is upon your life. And yet, in the midst of these attacks, there is a truth that should fill you with courage. God has not left you defenseless. When he marks you, he equips you with everything you need to stand firm against the enemy's schemes. The Bible tells us to put on the whole armor of God. Ephesians 6:11. This armor is not just a metaphor. It is a spiritual reality. It is the protection, strength, and wisdom God provides to help you overcome every attack. The armor of God includes the belt of truth, the breastplate of righteousness, the shield of faith, the helmet of salvation, the sword of the Spirit, and the readiness of the gospel of peace. Each piece is essential, and when you are marked by God, you learn to rely on them daily. Truth guards your mind against deception. Righteousness protects your heart from sin. Faith shields you from the fiery darts of the enemy's lies. Salvation secures your identity in Christ. The Word of God becomes your weapon against every falsehood and temptation. And the peace of the gospel keeps your feet planted firmly in God's promises. One of the most important aspects of spiritual warfare is recognizing that the battle is not yours to fight alone. God fights for you. He goes before you, surrounds you, and empowers you to stand strong. When you feel overwhelmed, it is His strength that sustains you. When you feel weak, it is His grace that empowers you. When you feel lost, it is His guidance that leads you. This awareness changes everything. You no longer see opposition as a reason to give up, but as a confirmation that God's hand is truly upon your life. You understand that trials are part of the journey, but they are not the end of the story. Instead of running from the battle, you face it with confidence, knowing that God is with you. But spiritual warfare is not just about defending yourself from attacks. It's also about advancing God's kingdom. When you are marked by God, you are called to tear down strongholds, to bring light where there is darkness, and to set captives free. You are called to stand in the gap for others, to pray with authority, and to declare God's truth over situations that seem hopeless. This kind of warfare requires perseverance. It requires a determination to keep pressing forward, even when the battle seems relentless. It requires a commitment to stand firm in faith no matter how fierce the attacks become. And most of all, it requires a deep and abiding trust in the one who has called you. The beauty of being marked by God is that no weapon formed against you can prosper. The enemy may attack, but he cannot win, because when God places His mark upon your life, He also places His protection over you. And that protection is more powerful than any scheme the enemy could ever devise. Spiritual warfare is real, but so is God's victory. When you are marked by Him, you can face every battle with courage, knowing that the one who called you is greater than any force that stands against you. And when you stand in His strength, you are truly unstoppable. When you are marked by God, one of the most powerful and undeniable signs is the fruitfulness of your life. This fruitfulness is not about worldly success, material wealth, or human applause. Instead, it is about producing lasting, meaningful results that glorify God and advance His kingdom. It is about bearing fruit that reflects His nature, His love, and His purpose. It's about making a lasting impact that touches lives, transforms hearts, and draws people closer to Him. Fruitfulness begins with your connection to God. Jesus said in John 15:05, I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. When you are marked by God, you understand that your ability to bear fruit is entirely dependent on your relationship with Him. It is not something you can manufacture through effort or ambition. It comes from abiding in Him, drawing strength and guidance from His presence, and allowing Him to work through you. The fruit God desires to produce in your life is first and foremost spiritual. Galatians 5:22 through 23 describes the fruit of the Spirit as love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. These qualities are not mere personality traits. They are evidence of God's transformative work within you. They are the marks of a life surrendered to Him, a life that reflects His character to the world. When you are marked by God, this fruit becomes evident to those around you. People see the way you love others selflessly, forgive freely, and serve with humility. They notice your patience in trials, your kindness towards strangers, and your integrity in situations where compromise would be easier. Your life becomes a living testimony of God's power and grace. But spiritual fruitfulness is not limited to character development. It also includes the impact you have on the lives of others. God has called you to be a light in the darkness, a voice of hope, and a vessel of His love. When you are marked by Him, He gives you a divine assignment that is unique to you, whether it is through ministry, leadership, creativity, service, or everyday acts of kindness. God desires to use you to bring his kingdom to earth. Your fruitfulness may not always be seen or celebrated by others, but it matters greatly to God. Sometimes the most powerful acts of fruitfulness are those done in secret, prayers spoken in the quiet of your room, acts of compassion shown to those who can never repay you, and words of encouragement given to someone in their darkest hour. God sees it all, and he values it more than you can imagine. One of the most beautiful aspects of being marked by God is that he equips you for fruitfulness. He gives you gifts, talents, and abilities designed specifically for the purpose he has called you to fulfill. But more than that, he gives you his Spirit to empower you. It is not your strength or wisdom that produces lasting fruit. It is his power working through you. But fruitfulness doesn't come without challenges. The enemy will try to hinder your progress, distract you from your purpose, and convince you that your efforts are in vain. You may face seasons where the fruit seems scarce, where your labor feels futile, and where your prayers seem unanswered. But even in those moments, God is working. Sometimes he is pruning you, removing what is unnecessary to make room for greater growth. Sometimes he is testing your faithfulness, preparing you for even greater impact. The key to fruitfulness is faithfulness. It is remaining steadfast in your calling, even when the results are not immediately visible. It is trusting that God is working behind the scenes, causing the seeds you have planted to grow in his perfect timing. It is choosing to remain connected to him, drawing from his strength, wisdom, and guidance every step of the way. Fruitfulness also involves multiplication. When you are marked by God, your impact doesn't end with you. It spreads to others, inspiring them to pursue God, serve him, and bear fruit in their own lives. Your obedience becomes a catalyst for transformation, not only in your life, but also in the lives of those you touch. And ultimately, true fruitfulness is all about glorifying God. It's about making his name known, his love felt, and his truth embraced. It's about pointing people to him, not to yourself. It's about being faithful to the calling he has placed upon your life, knowing that your labor is never in vain when it is done for his glory. When you are marked by God, your life will bear fruit. It may not always be visible, and it may not always be recognized by others, but it will be real. And that fruit will last because it is born out of your connection to the one who has marked you, called you, and empowered you to fulfill his purpose.